Well, good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday morning to you. Welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I'm the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. And as always, I just really appreciate you being with me. I appreciate being with you. And thank you again for all of those who continue to inquire about my health. We're kind of in a little bit of a holding pattern right here. Got some new blood pressure medicine to try to figure out. And the good thing about it is my blood pressure has come down almost to my normal levels before all of this nonsense started. This is Tuesday while I'm filming. Yesterday I was supposed to film with Daniel for our Tuesday night Two Guys in the Bible Fulfilled radio program, but I had just a pretty bad spell yesterday. I was just, boy, I tell you, as the old saying goes, felt like a truck ran over me, backed up, and did it all over again. And I don't know what precipitated that particular event. My blood pressure was elevated somewhat. Have no reason or rhyme to explain that, but I was unable to film with Daniel. And boy, I appreciate Daniel filling in for me there on my program. It really is a tremendous help. He's a great asset to that program. But nonetheless, good to be back with you here on Wednesday. I want to pick up where I left off yesterday. And remember now, we are conflating Matthew chapter 25, 31 and following. And by the way, the private messages in regard to Monday's lesson, in which I demonstrated that Matthew chapter 25, 31 and following is about the coming of the Son of Man, obviously and undeniably, to sit on the throne of his glory, obviously and undeniably, and to sit in judgment, obviously and undeniably. All of which taken directly from Daniel chapter 7. Well, that being true, okay, let me just reiterate this, because like I said, I've had several people contact me privately basically going, wow, holy cow, that's incredible. Because you see, Daniel chapter 7 is set and foretold the time of the Roman Empire. The time of the appearance of the little horn that would persecute the saints. And the Lord would come and judge the little horn. Daniel 7:15 and following. Well, so if it's true, okay, watch this. If it's true that Matthew chapter 25, 31 and following, and the coming of the Son of Man to sit on the throne of his glory in judgment, is taken from Daniel chapter 7, 13 and 14, actually the whole chapter, then it must be true that the judgment scene of Matthew chapter 25, 31 and following would be fulfilled in the days of the Roman Empire. But wait a minute. Daniel 7 is the judgment of the little horn, fulfilling Revelation. Daniel chapter 7 is the coming of the Lord in judgment to judge the persecutor. In other words, the little horn, the beast, the horn, etc. So once again, if it's true that Matthew chapter 25, 31 and following is about the end of the millennium judgment of Satan, the great persecutor, along with, the little horn imagery and all that kind of stuff. If it's all the same, if you agree that Matthew chapter 25, 31 and following is the same as the great white throne judgment, which 99.9% of people agree that it is, and if it's from Daniel chapter 7, then that means that Matthew 25 and the end of the millennium judgment and destruction of Satan was in the first century. Game over. Olivet Discourse not divided. No eschatology. No end of the age beyond AD 70. Game over. Okay, got to move on. So on Tuesday, I shared with you how Hebrews 11 ties in and segues beautifully with Matthew 23 through 25 and the prediction of the avenging of the blood of the martyrs. Now, I shared with you, and again, I'm filming on Tuesday, speaking to you on Wednesday. So I spoke to you yesterday. The very first time I started seeing these connections, I was literally blown away. Because when you go to Matthew chapter 23 and you begin reading about how Jesus said, all of the blood of all the righteous, from righteous Abel unto Zacharias, son of Barachias, whom you slew between the temple and altar. All of these things shall come upon this generation, Jesus said. And then you come to Hebrews chapter 11, and you find that the author of Hebrews is talking about the avenging of the blood of Abel. Oh, and Enoch and Noah and Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, and all of the other martyrs of Jesus. And one of the most astounding things to me, when I discovered it, and this is 25 years ago, but when I discovered that Moses and those like him, about whom we will read here momentarily, was a martyr of Christ, a martyr for Christ. Do you catch that? You know, I think we have a tendency to bifurcate between all of those Old Testament worthies. Okay, they just simply suffered for their faith in God. Well, that's obviously true, but they suffered for and with Christ. Let me read again. I'm reading from the good old King James of Hebrews chapter 11, 24 and following. By faith Moses, when he was come to years, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer affliction. Now, why would Moses choose to suffer affliction? Was he some kind of a masochist? No. He realized he had been instructed, according to the book of Exodus, you know, his mother kind of wet nursed him and all this kind of stuff like that. He had been instructed on who he was. He was a child of God. He was a child of Yahweh. He was different. So he refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer affliction. But again, not just affliction. He wasn't just saying, boy, I think it would be really cool to go out there and join that bunch of Hebrew guys and have these Egyptian taskmasters, whip them with the whip and, you know, I beat them down. That'd be so cool. You know I'm being facetious. No, there was a cause. There was an identity with the Hebrews that Moses knew he was a part of. He was rather willing to suffer afflictions with, critical word, with the people of God, than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a season. Now watch this. Esteeming the reproach of Christ. Wait a minute. Christ won't come for 1,500 years. But Moses esteemed the reproach of Christ. Now, this is the Greek word, sunai, and it literally means reproach. It's not pressure, it's not thalipsis, it's not persecution per se, but it's been evil spoken of, and it is nonetheless suffering. But the key point that I wanted to share with you and to drive home today, this is Moses who through faith, I mean, how else could he be said to be suffering the reproaches of Christ and believing that the afflictions of his Hebrew brethren were worth more than the pleasures of Egypt unless he had been instructed on the fact that someone was coming. A Savior was coming to give a reward greater than the riches of Egypt to give a reward greater than wealth, prosperity, influence, popularity, and power. And so, just like Abraham before him, he looked for a city, he looked for a country whose builder and maker is God. He looked for something beyond this life. Now, let me share with you that Moses was not alone, because the writer of Hebrews goes ahead to tell us about Joshua and Israel entering into the land, finally by faith. And he says, verse 31, by faith the harlot Rahab did not perish with those who did not believe, when she had received the spies with peace. And what more shall I say? For time would fail me to tell of Gideon, and Barak, and Samson, Jephthah, also of David and Samuel and the prophets, who through faith subdued kingdoms, worked righteousness, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the violence of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, out of weakness were made strong, became valiant in battle, turned to flight the enemies, the armies of the aliens. Women received their dead raised to life again. Others were tortured, not accepting deliverance, that they might obtain a better resurrection. Others had trial of mockings and scourgings, yes, and chains of imprisonment. They were stoned. They were sawn in two. By the way, it's generally believed, when it's talking about being sawn in two, it's generally believed that's a reference to Isaiah, who suffered martyrdom. Anyway, they were stoned. They were sawn in two. They were tempted. They were slain with a sword. They wandered about in sheepskins, goatskins, being destitute, afflicted, tormented, of whom the world was not worthy. They wandered in deserts and mountains and dens and caves of the earth. And of these, all of these, having obtained a good testimony through faith, did not receive the promise. Folks, this is incredible. They all died in faith. They all died looking forward. They all died suffering the reproaches of Christ. But they didn't receive the promise of the heavenly city, the better country, the better resurrection. Oh, but wait. God, having provided something better for us, those Old Testament worthies were looking forward to something. They did not receive it, but they looked forward, and as Hebrews chapter 11 says, Abraham looked forward to this city and country, and they saw it far off. In other words, Abraham knew that the blessing of the coming of the seed through whom all the nations would be blessed. He actually knew it wasn't even Isaac. Was it Jacob? That promise was far off. If it would have been something they could have attained and obtained in this world, in this life, then they never would have left the country they left in or they left from. But you see, they saw and they looked to that which they did not see. Just as Jesus said in John chapter 8, verse 56 and following, Abraham longed to see my day. He saw it and was glad. But when did he see it? He didn't see it near. He didn't see it shortly. He didn't see it coming soon. He saw it far off, which kind of blows out of the water all those people who say, oh, the promises of God are always near. They're always at hand. No, they're not. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and all those worthies saw the promise of the heavenly country, the heavenly city, the better resurrection. They saw it far off. But they embraced it. They made it theirs, and they endured affliction. Now, the writer closes this chapter by saying, they would out us. That's the first century generation. Those Old Testament worthies will not get their reward without the new covenant saints. It would all congeal. It would all come together all at the same time. And thus the writer would say in Hebrews chapter 12, you have come to Mount Zion. Mount Zion is that city of the resurrection. It is the heavenly city. It is the heavenly country. It is everything that the old covenant saints longed for. And here is the writer of Hebrews saying, that's the first century saints. You have arrived at Mount Zion. Folks, there could not be clearer demonstration. Can you imagine a Jew who had read the Old Testament scriptures over and over and over and over and over a million times, realizing that Zion was to be the capital of the kingdom, that Zion would be the focal point of the resurrection, it would be the place of the messianic banquet, it would be the place of the wedding, it would be the place of eternal life, it would be, well, in a sum, it would be the focus of your eschatological hope, along with the Old Covenant worthies. And the time was going to come in which Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob would sit down in the kingdom, at the table, in the kingdom, Matthew 8:11. That time was right upon them in Hebrews chapter 12. You have come to Mount Zion. Gads, that's beautiful. And it tells us that the fulfillment of the promise, the fulfillment of the prayer, how long, O Lord, holy and true, do you not avenge us on those that are on the earth? They were standing on the cusp of realization. It came in AD 70. I'm out of time. Hey, we are out of time for my 2-book special. I mean, here we are, last of the month. Take advantage of it. Revelation Realized, study of the avenging of the martyrs from Genesis to Revelation by Sam Dawson, and We Shall Meet Him in the Air, the Wedding of the King of Kings. Beautiful banner right there on my website, donkpreston.com. Go there, order the books. Be sure to do it. You don't have much time left. In fact, if you have any time left. So anyway, take advantage of it. It's good for today. We'll make sure of that. Okay? I'll see you on the flip side.